Hi, welcome to Got Your Back podcast. This episode is about what resolves social anxiety. I'm Faith, your host. I'm a licensed mental health counselor, licensed school psychologist, licensed special ed teacher.
I'm your junior co-host, Ellie. I am currently in my 5th year at Northeastern University, finishing up my computer engineering, computer science degree. I am an active client of mental health counseling in the 3 principles. I've been a client for about 2 years now.
Hi, I'm Ritu. I'm the other junior host of the Got Your Back podcast. I am an active client of mental health counseling grounded in the 3 principles for the past 2.5 years now. I just recently graduated from Northeastern University, and I was part of a 5-year program there.
So in today's program, this is actually part 4 of an anxiety series. And what we're doing today is really diving into what resolves social anxiety. Like if you're not feeling socially anxious, then what are you feeling and doing instead? So we're going to be facilitating new levels of understanding what's behind resolving social anxiety from leading edge facts that we've realized inside from cultivating more mental health. And then we're going to be talking about examples of applying these leading edge mental health facts in everyday ordinary situations. And then finally, we're also going to be talking about simple how-to steps to apply these leading edge mental health facts based on 3 principles psychology, focused on understanding the operating system inside and using it more consciously to understand the flip side of in live time. If you're not feeling socially anxious, what do you do instead inside? So to begin, what resolves social anxiety? In a nutshell, cultivating more mental health inside. And we're capable of cultivating unlimited levels of mental health no matter where we're at in our life, in our head currently, how we see ourselves or what emotions or feelings we're experiencing. It's just the way we're built. Our operating system inside is built to experience new and greater levels of mental health. So that's the ultimate answer. But when you break that down into parts, as you cultivate more mental health, resolving the source of whatever is going on inside, you naturally experience more and more resilience simply in any live moment, in any situation, which is the opposite of experiencing social anxiety or imposter syndrome in live time. The other piece that happens is you just have a greater sense of your authentic self. And that really is a solid foundation in one's life, anywhere, anytime. And that also just naturally resolves social anxiety.
Can I ask what exactly is your authentic self then?
That's a really good question, Ritu. I'm really glad you asked it. In a simple phrase, the opposite of understanding yourself in live time from your authentic self is your conditioned self. And our conditioned self is things we believe about ourselves that we think are true, or things we've heard about ourselves that other people think is true, but it's subjective. It's using the power inside called thought in a less conscious way and making up these subjective beliefs about oneself and then believing them like they're the facts about yourself. So in live time, when you use your mind more consciously, you have realizations. That's one thing that happens. And when you have a realization, you're getting a glimpse of your authentic self because it's originating from your authentic self. It's not coming from, and how you experience that, where that's coming from is this priceless capability inside called innate wisdom. And innate wisdom is a feature of our mind inside, not our brain, our mind. And when we see from it, we just experience this clarity. We just have an inner knowing. This is something that's true. And it's actually facts that are coming through that we're seeing versus using our power called thought and making up things about that live event or ourself, or just automatically just believing someone else's thinking about us. Is that clear?
Yeah, like I feel like I myself, before I got into this, like my idea of who I was like, I'm an insecure, like / anxious person. So that's like a conditioned belief about yourself, but your authentic self is a lot more, from what you're saying, like true, I guess. Like it's not such a heavy feeling.
Right. Like when you see from your authentic self, you are secure, you are grounded, like you feel right inside, like it just clicks. And that's because honestly, you've put your power thought down. Your mind is more open, your mind is more clear. That innate wisdom is coming through. So we have this very powerful power called thought inside. It's one psychological element of our operating system. And with a lower self-awareness, we can just constantly be picking up this power called thought and making up a lot of stuff with it, just like with a paintbrush. And so that's one of the things that happens in mental health counseling that's grounded in 3 principles psychology, is you start seeing more, you realize more and more how you're using this power called thought and ways that would be best to use this power called thought. Like, so you just become more skillful and aware in how you use it. So it lends itself to having more realizations about who you really are as a human being. Did you have any other questions? Did that clear that up?
Yeah,
or?
That makes sense.
Okay. So the third thing that happens when you cultivate more mental health that's related to resolving social anxiety is you understand more how to connect with other people, and you just do it more simply, more consistently. It just becomes more natural, because connection is actually a natural part of us. There's things that can get in the way of connecting. This is what we're going to focus on today, is this third piece of cultivating more mental health in relation to resolving social anxiety. We're going to really be digging into understanding connection at new levels, at deeper levels. Prior to that, it's important to kind of do a sidebar, 2 points to make, and then we'll go back into connection. In general, when you're listening to these podcasts, or in any moment when there's conversation going on, or you're in the middle of a live event, you really want to use your mind to realize what is being conveyed, what is going on, versus just believing what we're saying or agreeing with us or disagreeing with us. You really want to use your mind more consciously. You'll get a lot more out of what we're saying, and that's where you're going to be seeing from your authentic self as we're speaking. The other sidebar is just to mention up front that there's different variations of connections in the physical world. That's the outside, such as friendship, such as an intimate life partner. Some people call it a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a husband, a wife. Connection with self, connection with the divine, professional connections. And then there's also connections with animals and connection with nature.
Faith, is there a difference between these types of connection?
What we're experiencing inside, what we're doing inside, there's a lot of similarities. And that's what we're really going to talk about. Like on the outside, there's different boundaries. There's different ways of navigating it. So for example, you have a close relationship with an animal, that's going to be different, the boundaries or the way you're going to navigate it, than with your spouse.
Right.
In general, we're going to be just talking about connection as far as what's happening inside, that you're able to feel that connection. What is that through line, that common thing that's happening when you talk about all these different connections in the physical world, array of cakes, and they all look very different, and they have different icings and decorations on them, and maybe the flavor of the cake is very different. But what we're going to be talking about today is actually cake itself, just the simple basic essence of the cake. With that understanding, it will lead to greater connection in all physical connections that happen. When we understand how to connect, when we understand the simple steps, like where does it originate from, what is it, we're just able to more easily do it. And that's the opposite of social anxiety.
Faith, what exactly is the difference between a connection versus a relationship with something?
Oh, okay. That's a really great question. A connection is something that's happening in the now. It's an experience that's happening in the now. A relationship is something you form over time. It's a lot of nows. It's a culmination of connection or lack of connection within that relationship. So a relationship could be actually human beings. That's all they really have as far as psychologically is relationships to things, relationship to themselves, relationship to money, relationship to time, relationship to their parents, relationship to their animals, relationship to education and learning, relationship to how to have friends. So there's a human being, and then there's psychologically, like what is their interconnection with that thing, whatever that thing is. So a relationship is something you develop over time. It's a level of understanding. It's how you keep approaching it. It's many moments, where a connection is something that happens in live time. Does that answer your question?
Yeah.
Okay. The first thing to understand about connection is that every human being is naturally built to experience connection. This is a natural capability we have inside. And what really interferes with it is our lack of understanding around it. And, that's where they talk a lot about like your childhood experiences, because a child is built to connect. But when they're in their environment, how much does their environment understand how to connect? And then that sets up the child, whether they learn how to connect or where they feel connection. And this is where you'll hear about people having attachment issues. That's where the beginning of mental health problems can start to happen, or lack of self-awareness, or lack of relationship skills, or lack of self-awareness skills. It's the world that they come into, the physical world that they come into. No matter how much those people care about that individual, what is their level of knowledge? What is their level of mental health that they understand how to connect with that young little baby that comes into the world? So this is where it all begins to move away from that natural capability, because with any natural capability, there's things for you to learn about it, to become aware of it, like how it works. A great example is someone who's really gifted at a sport. They'll discover it at a young age that they're like really good at throwing a ball, and then they maybe join a baseball team and they become the pitcher. But to learn skills, how to throw that ball in that game, they have to learn that, okay? They have to learn how to condition their body more so they actually are able to better and better throw that ball. They have to actually learn the skills, like how does the sport work? So we can have these natural capabilities inside, but it's important that they're nurtured. And a lot of that is understanding them, cultivating them, and it's just natural work to do. And it's really up to the human being how much work they put into it, or how seriously they take it. We have this thing inside called free will. And free will is a gift. And we always get to choose in the now, how are we going to respond? What are we going to decide? For example, anybody who comes to me for mental health counseling, they're using their free will to make that decision. And then when they come to me and I do an intake, I'm understanding why they're showing up. And over time, it'll show up how much they'll invest. That's their free will or the work that they put into it. We all have this natural capability inside to connect, but to nurture it, to understand it, to cultivate it, that's up to the human being. For some of us, it can be harder because of our lack of awareness around it, or maybe experiences we've had around it that can often be referred to as traumatic experiences. It could be mood related. There's a lot of different reasons. There can be barriers to that accessing that natural capability inside and experiencing that natural capability. And one of them is social anxiety. I just wanted to clarify that every human being has this capability. And that's a big reason to participate in mental health counseling with the 3 psychological principles, because you're actually learning how to use your operating system and how to access that natural capability inside more simply. So what is connection? Ellie, Ritu, could you give an example of how you understand connection now, or a live example of when you've experienced connection and how different that is than in the past, how you used to experience or approach connection due to the mental health you've cultivated and how much more awareness you have about your authentic self?
Yeah. I used to definitely think of connection as like things on the outside. In like relationships where I didn't understand connection as much, it would be like, what is my partner like doing acts of service for me, or like, do we spend a lot of time together? Like, connection was just a very like kind of like a checklist of things that you would check off, and then if those things are checked off, I would be like, okay, we're connected, we're in a relationship, like whatever. But now I feel like I see connection a lot more from the inside, and a lot more from like how I'm building a relationship with someone, and like how I'm using my mind to interact with them. So like, for example, like I had a recent experience of connection where I felt like we're having a really open dialogue about something like very personal between both of us. And, you know, in the past, I think like in those moments, I've carried a lot of like expectations, a lot of like judgment into conversations like that with a partner. I wanted them to just tell me stuff, so I felt like they trusted me. It was a very like self-centered view of a relationship, I feel. But in this newer experience, now that I have like a greater awareness of connection, I was genuinely like interested in this, what the other person was saying. I felt like I was just listening with a very open mind. And after that conversation, like, I just felt like such a light feeling inside. Like, I felt like this is really cool to experience. Just like, I'm just really grateful that the other person was open about this stuff. I'm really grateful that I was in a position to be able to listen to them. It was just like a much lighter feeling. Like, I felt like there was a lot more just like connection, I guess, for lack of a better word, between us. Whereas in the past, I feel like I was never truly grounded in my relationship with other people, because I just had so many like expectations and ideas in my head about what connection looked like on the outside, but never really focused inside.
Can you would you be open to giving a little more explanation about like just simple facts about this experience that you had?
The new experience?
Yes.
Yeah. There was a moment at, let me rewind. So yeah, we were out with some mutual friends and an event happened and I was feeling a little bit embarrassed. Like, the person I was with, my partner, did something that was, you know, whatever. It was a thing that happened.
Could you just tell us what it was?
Yeah.
What did
he
your
spilled
partner
a drink. Yeah. It wasn't looking at it now, like he just spilled a drink. And
so you were out to dinner and
Yeah.
he spilled a drink.
Yeah, and we were with some mutual friends, and I definitely felt like from like a lower level of consciousness, like I was feeling embarrassed. Like I was like taking what he did very personally as like a reflection of me or whatever, like a very self-centered view. But I definitely was aware of that feeling. And so later that night we were walking home. I think I was aware of that feeling, and I was taking some steps inside to kind of ground myself. And then eventually, like, I was walking home with him, and I was just like, very openly, like, what happened? Like, how are you feeling? Like, what's going on? And so we had a talk, and it was just very, very open, very honest. Like, I wasn't, in the past, like, I feel like I could have carried a lot of judgment into that situation. Like, I could have been like, you know, why did you do that? Like, it was just really embarrassing, like, kind of blaming him for how I was feeling, or like putting these expectations on him, or just like, you know, trying to like make him feel guilty or say sorry or something. But this time I was just like, I'm noticing the vibe, like, your vibe is different. I know I was experiencing a lower feeling, and so like I just want to know, like, what's going on, like, just very, what's going on with you? Like, I don't know, nothing really in my head about it other than just wanting to like get to know where he was at.
So if I could break that down psychologically to help our listeners understand more from a 3 principle perspective, how you're using your operating system, what is going on there. There was something that happened in live time. You're at dinner and you're with your partner and you're with a group of friends and he spills a drink. Okay. You innocently used your operating system to take that personally, to see from the personal, to use your power thought to make up a me thought, an I thought, like, why, like this is something about me, as your partner is spilling a drink. And so when you left the restaurant, you're saying you're taking steps to ground yourself. What it is inside, you're taking steps independently to self-regulate. You're now shifting your state of mind. And what you did was you started going into psychological listening instead of thinking. And what was happening was those personal thoughts, that taking it personally, were clearing out of your head. And you were becoming more aware in that moment, more present, like your awareness was growing because your head was clearing out. In present time, you could feel that there was a vibe going on. Like, you're again psychologically listening in present time, and you're becoming very aware of what's happening in present time. From the impersonal, you're feeling a vibe shift. It has nothing to do with you. You're not doing any thinking. You're understanding it, you're receiving it. And then from that place, you just did the right thing. And you said to him, what's going on? What's happening? Where are we at right now? And because you were in the impersonal, you were in a more grounded, desire to understand place, and more open mind, he felt the safety and the freedom to talk to you about what was going on inside of him. During that time, did he blame you for how he was feeling, or did he talk about something else about how he was feeling? Could you elaborate a little on that?
Yeah, he wasn't, I mean, I'm grateful. Like, he was also very open to just communicating how he felt without also taking it out on me. He was like, he actually said, like, I felt that you were upset as well. And he was talking about, like, how one of his conditioned habits was to kind of take that feeling really personally and kind of shut down a little bit. And we talked a little bit about, like, he had some awareness of, like, where that came from in his past, and just, like, was very open to me about some experiences that he had in his life that, you know, I wasn't expecting him to talk about. Like, I wasn't trying to get that out of him, but it just felt like because we were so open with each other, it just kind of, like, naturally happened.
So in that moment, he came from more self-awareness. He was coming from his authentic self. He was seeing from innate wisdom inside, and he was saying to you his habit of his conditioned habit of how he's come to use his mind.
Yeah.
That's a lot of self-awareness. Like, in that moment, that was a very real, genuine moment where he was seeing from his authentic self. He wasn't blaming you for how he felt. He wasn't blaming the outside. When you're blaming the outside, you're using your power thought in this conditioned way, and you're seeing from insecurity, And with your power thought, you're saying the outside is responsible for how you feel. He didn't do that. The way he used his mind, he listened to his innate wisdom, and he saw it was coming from inside and what he was doing inside. And he also saw where it was originating from his past and this conditioned habit that he developed from his past, his childhood, and what went on there. So that's actually that's an excellent example of connection, and it's happening inside, individually, inside each of you. The connection is originating from innate wisdom in that moment. You led the way. You led the way by going from a personal state of mind, taking the steps to self-regulate, shift your state of mind, and see from the impersonal or innate wisdom. And it opened up the door. That was like your connection was already coming from innate wisdom inside, your desire to understand what is going on right now. And he didn't feel any pressure. There was no pressure coming from you. Like, you were vulnerable, and you opened the door for him to be vulnerable too. And then from inside, it sounded like he started seeing and speaking from innate wisdom to you, and you learned something really new about yourself. And that's called emotional intimacy. Physical intimacy is when you get into touching, and some people use physical intimacy in order to clear their head out so they can be in a better place inside, which can lend itself potentially to go into emotional intimacy. But these were just direct moments of emotional intimacy, and this is what, in a intimate relationship with a partner, this is what really matters. You know, people might think it's the physical intimacy that matters, but usually that is a mechanism to experience the emotional intimacy. Deep down, what everybody's really looking for is that connection from originating from within, like allowing that to flow.
Yeah. I think it's cool too. Like, I just wanted to point out, like, he has never like formally been introduced to the three principles. Like, I don't even know if like he in that moment would have called it innate wisdom or anything, but it was still something that he was able to tap into even without like a formal education in three principles psychology. So I just thought it was kind of a cool, like, he was tapping into something.
Right. So here's the thing. We always can tap into innate wisdom. It's inside of us. The thing is the more we understand it, the more simply we can tap into, and we understand why to tap into it, or how to tap into it. And that really changes how we navigate life. So in the now, we're either using our mind more consciously, leaving the paintbrush called thought down, or using it more skillfully, or we're using this power called thought in a very conditioned way, a less aware way. And in those moments, we're more lost inside. We're seeing more from beliefs, from imagination, from the personal, from subjective. That in itself it's not a problem. How much is the individual understanding that's where they're seeing from? Because that's where our decisions and actions come from. For example, if you would have stayed in the personal, it's more likely maybe a fight would have happened, or he would have felt hurt or something like that, or it would have been navigated very differently. It would have been a totally different experience. That's where having this awareness is more helpful, because you're more able to easily do it, and you're able to do it more independently. So it's what you've learned in mental health counseling with the three principles that gave you more of an opportunity to shift out of that conditioned state of mind and approach it more consciously. But you've always had innate wisdom. It's just you're becoming more aware that you have it, what it is, how to access it, why to access it.
Ultimately, what is the most important connection like one should thrive or keep developing as they go through life then?
It's inside, and it's with innate wisdom. Any connection that we do feel it is originating from inside, and it is originating from innate wisdom. I mean, that's our priceless capability inside. That's what we're all really looking for psychologically. And we might be using activities or things on the outside to access it. You know, that's where addiction can come from, is that we're less aware and we have this go-to activity or person or thing that when we go to that thing, we're starting to let our mind clear out. We're starting to use our mind more consciously, ground ourselves. And the thing is we don't need that go-to activity to feel that, whether it's smoking cigarettes or drinking alcohol, or whether it's being around a certain person that we think we can't live without, or that we, none of these things are bad in moderation. It's when we feel this compelling feeling, we have to have it, or it just becomes this go-to response to relax or to feel better. And I've got air quotes with my hands going on right now, because when we do those things and we start to feel more grounded, when we start to feel more clear in our head or more secure inside, it's really what we're doing inside when we're doing it. And really we're allowing that connection to innate wisdom again. So psychologically, that is vital to us. So innate wisdom is where love originates from. It's where realizations originate from. It's where creativity originates from. Like when you have these ideas that, so for example, the Wright brothers, they had no idea how to build a plane, some kind of piece of transportation that got off the ground. It was every time they used their mind more consciously and they connected with innate wisdom, they had another realization. And that they kept at it and they kept at it and they kept, when they had mistakes or they did something wrong, they would do something inside where then they would have another realization and eventually come up with the answer with that. And that's how the plane was created. It was created by two individuals that periodically or intermittently connected to innate wisdom, and they just keep developing this machine that finally got off the ground. So anything that's really good that happens in one's life, they're seeing from that priceless capability inside, and that is the essence of mind. Mind is the living energy inside of us. It's a living energy. It's not like electricity. Electricity, it's just power. That's all. It's not living. Mind is living, and that's anything that's living has an intelligence in it. So that intelligence is inside of us, but yet we have this operating system, mind, thought, consciousness, where we can use the power of thought and innocently override innate wisdom or dismiss innate wisdom or do something insecure in response to when we're experiencing innate wisdom. And so this is the power of understanding how to use our operating system more consciously, because we actually unlock our own secrets about ourself or relationships or life. That's how we heal from trauma, is we have those realizations. Back to connection, it is something that originates from inside. It's more of a feeling. And that feeling is actually communicating the state of mind inside. You're allowing mind to be in a particular state, and that's what that feeling is communicating. It is the opposite way of using the operating system than social anxiety or imposter syndrome or feeling really lonely inside. Those are ways of using the operating system where you're using the power of thought innocently in conditioned, less aware ways, and you're feeling very insecure or you're feeling very isolated. When you put down that power of thought, you self-regulate and you'll start reconnecting with innate wisdom, and things will start to shift for you. I'm not saying it's the miracle cure. Maybe some things need to be understood or steps need to be taken from that new awareness inside, but it is at the ground level the place to get unlost inside. Connection is a basic psychological human need. We have basic biological needs like air, like water. Connection is a basic psychological need, our invisible part of ourself. So that's thoughts, that's feelings, that's behaviors, decisions, learning. That connection is part of our psychological self. And the more we stay committed to understanding it and cultivating it, it just becomes more and more natural and simple, just a part of our life. And Ellie gave a great example. Ritu, do you have an example about connection that you can talk about, any kind of connection?
I feel like it's kind of like a long-term example. I feel like before I started the 3 principles counseling, when I viewed connection, I kept viewing it as like things on the outside, like my connection with my friends or connection with my family. And I feel like I didn't really understand what connection is. I kind of viewed my relationship with these other things in my life where I would constantly have to like please them. So I would have to, like, the only way I would feel connection with my family or like with my friends is buying them gifts on their birthday, even when it didn't feel like authentic, or always being there for them, always like listening to them when they have like bad events going on in their life. Kind of like, it felt like I was people pleasing in a way where I would like kind of giving my all to all these different relationships in my life. But then when it came to the connection with myself, it would be very degrading. I would be very critical of myself. I would just be like, I would be overthinking all the time. But I feel like after I learned about the 3 principles, I felt like I really needed to hone in my connection with myself, because that's how I realized like the stronger the connection is with myself and with innate wisdom, the better I will be able to like support other people in my life, or like come more from an authentic and grounded place in my life then.
When you were people pleasing other people,
Mm-hmm.
like how much did you allow them to know about yourself, or how much were they even interested in knowing really about you?
I feel like I didn't really like express myself that much. I would just be very quiet and not really express my opinions, because then again I would be like, well, I can't say certain things because I want to please this person and I want to be just like them then and be in like the same boat as they're thinking then. And I also feel like I wasn't in a lot of relationships where questions or just like being curious was a very strong principle, I would say. Like, it's more like we're just talking back and forth, but I'm also not really talking that much. Like, I'm just doing a lot of the listening then.
Part of the relationship is they didn't really spend time asking questions, getting to know you.
Mm-hmm. Like, they would tell me all these things about myself that I would just feel like it doesn't really make sense.
It didn't ring true to you. It didn't resonate.
Yeah.
So the way they were using their operating system, and I'm under the impression this is a core group of people you're around. Mm-hmm. Typically, we call them family, and everybody's family is different. We're using the broad brush family. And what you're basically saying is they already thought they knew you without asking anything about you, which honestly, that's impossible. Mm-hmm. You know, to really get to know another person, you have to be really interested in understanding who they are. And that's a way of using the mind. And that's called reflecting. But part of reflecting is really listening with an open mind. That's psychological listening, really being interested, really receiving what someone else is saying. And then when it's not clicking inside of you, you start asking very simple, open questions. And it's not comprehending the words. It's seeing beyond the words to the point the person is trying to communicate, that they are actually, like, words are just pointers. Mm. What they're seeing inside, it's like how you really listen to them. And so it's essential to get to know someone, to ask them questions. And Ellie gave an excellent example, a very simple one, where after there's this mishap at dinner with her partner, she she tunes in and she says, where are we? Like, what's going on? What's happening with you? Like, that's an open mind, and that's a loving state. Like, you're really interested to understand where you at, what's going on. For you to be in a situation, Ritu, where you're like, let's just say it was seldom that you got asked a question about yourself. It's like they're just believing their made up thoughts about you. They're just using their paintbrush all the time. They're making up these ideas about you. This is a conditioned way of using their mind. And then they're choosing to believe these made up things in their head about you. And then this is what they're conveying to you about yourself. And this actually can happen pretty frequently with people. And this is why it's so important to learn how to psychologically listen. You knew deep down that was innate wisdom. It wasn't resonating with you. Like, what they were saying, like, didn't feel true about yourself. But then it was you understanding, well, how do I find out what is really true about myself? What is really true about myself? Plus, how do I navigate these relationships that expect so much from me other than just people pleasing them? All of that is ground to go to mental health counseling and the 3 principles, so you can use your mind consciously and be with a provider who has a deep understanding of this, so that they're using their mind consciously, listening, understanding where you're coming from, and they're coming from their authentic self, communicating to you what they're experiencing, what's going on with you, and then also guiding you to use your mind consciously to see these answers for yourself and to learn how to respond from this place inside more consciously. So I've actually heard this a lot, this people pleasing. And my understanding, and you can correct me if in the case I'm missing something, and I'm sure there's like a lot to understand, so we're just going to touch upon it. But to me, it's like, you don't want to cause any problems. Like, you don't want to cause any conflicts. Like, you've had a lot of experiences that if you go outside of the people pleasing, there's like serious ramifications.
Yeah. I also feel like you also have this expectation that people should view you as one way. Like, I've heard examples of people saying like, oh, I don't want anyone thinking that I'm a mean person. I want everyone to think that I'm a very nice person, and I'm caring, and I'm like always there for people. So I feel like it's also an expectation that you have on yourself about the way that other people should view you then. Yeah.
That's all seeing from the personal. That's all subject. That's a mindset that's being made up. Really, the heart of the matter is, what do I really need to understand about myself in this situation, in this moment? Do you hear that question?
Yeah.
And that's an open mind. And that you're actually talking to innate wisdom. And you're saying, innate wisdom, guide me, show me, provide me with facts, with knowledge, which is realizations. Like, how do I navigate this right now? Or what is it I need to understand about myself right now, how to navigate this? And what you're doing is you're looking for clarity. And when you experience that realization, it's coming from innate wisdom, you're experiencing clarity. That is a connection right there. When you have that realization, you feel it. You feel the lightness, you feel the clarity. That's a connection right there. And that's a connection to self and to innate wisdom. And then you have this awareness, oh, this is what's going on. Oh, this is how I navigate it. And from that objective awareness is where then you create a solid boundary. You are caring. It might not be in the way people think or expect, but that you took the time to have the realization to look inside. That is an act of caring, but it's an act of, I call it 3D caring, because you're caring and respecting yourself by looking inside, by seeing from innate wisdom. But as you're doing that, that's going to radiate outside of you to your relationships, right? And it's just going to make, it's a win-win for everybody, for the situation, for the other people. I've often heard in some really sticky situations, metaphorically, I've worked with clients like this, where they're not in this great situation with their spouse or their boss, but they come from their authentic self and how it shifts the situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I would I've seen this with young kids. In a moment, they come from innate wisdom, and I'm around them, and I see they're the leader in that moment. Even they're the small kid, they would teach me as a teacher. And I would see how they would like lead their friends from that place. So innate wisdom is with us our entire life, from the time we're born until the time we die. It's actually the fountain of youth, quite frankly, because when you see from it, you feel this renewal, you feel this inspiration, and it's like a start over. If you're in the middle of like a bout of loneliness and you use your mind consciously and you connect with innate wisdom, it's like all of a sudden life shifts in front of you psychologically. You feel different, you see it different, and you know how to approach it at that point. I have actually even seen, I'm going to call them animal whisperers. And when they're doing these amazing things with these animals, they're seeing them from innate wisdom. They're talking to them from innate wisdom. And someone else could be coming from the personal or from a lower level of awareness. They're going to get a totally different response from that animal. There's a gentleman at my apartment complex, like I've seen him do it. Like I call him the dog whisperer. But he learns to use his mind more consciously. He's going to be able to do that in other areas of his life, not just with animals. Like he's learning about a capability that's inside of him that he could be using with his family. He could be using in tough situations, with money, with basically anything. So we just touched upon some important things about how to do connection, why to do connection. Part of what we just talked about with Ritu and with Ellie was in those moments, their desire to understand. And that's a state of mind. That is different than wanting someone to see you a particular way or wanting them to treat you a certain way. That's that wanting. That's personal. You're making it about you. That's an expectation. But instead, in that moment, to come from the impersonal with an open mind, with a listening state of mind, the desire to understand. Do you hear how impersonal that is? It's like, I just want to understand what's going on. And that's more inside out. And that the connection is coming from within and it's radiating out. That's actually the start of love right there, love and caring. So you're not people pleasing. Mm-hmm. You're not giving them what you imagine they want or what they imagine they need. All from the personal, all from beliefs or subjective awareness or conventional wisdom, you would call it. You're actually in that moment using your mind to see from facts what is going on here and responding from that place inside. Part of connection is boundaries. And boundaries, psychological boundaries, mean very simple. My feeling, my thoughts, my behaviors, they come from inside. Like if I love you, that's coming from inside and how I'm using my operating system. I'm seeing you through the eyes of love, okay? And that other person that you're with or talking to, their feeling, their thoughts, their behaviors, their decisions comes from inside of them and how they're using their operating system. So you could be feeling love towards them where they're using their operating system in a very conditioned way and they're seeing you through an insecure lens, and they could maybe like think you're crazy, or how could you love me? Like, you know, I'm not good enough, or just a bunch of other insecure states like people pleasing. So that's where there's kind of a misalignment between the two people. One is using their mind more consciously, one is using their mind less consciously. Both people could be using their mind less consciously, and this is where they're really disconnected. And this is maybe where arguments can happen a lot. Boundaries, psychological boundaries, they're invisible, but they exist. And they're there for every relationship. Like you'll hear crossing boundaries or having no boundaries. Boundaries is an important thing to understand at greater levels as far as connection.
I feel like just like touching maybe a little bit more clearly about like what gets in the way of connecting.
Yes. Rule number 1, keep it simple. Like it's a mantra. Like whenever you're getting stuck inside, Keep it simple. A lot of times when we're getting lost or we're feeling insecure, we're starting to overcomplicate it. We're starting to go into too much thinking. And inside, we're heading in the wrong direction. And that's a lot what can happen with social anxiety or with imposter syndrome. It's just like in your head, creating a lot of insecure thoughts and really just like getting lost in them. And it is that thinking that's actually the barrier between your connecting with the other person. It's self-regulating, taking the steps inside for your head to clear of those thoughts and ground yourself where your mind is open and clear. All of a sudden, the gateway of connection is starting to happen again. So you can only really experience social anxiety by picking up your power thought. There's 3 powers inside. Thought is one of them. And you're using your free will, whether you're picking it up or putting it down. And it's this magical paintbrush inside, and we can create anything with it. Anything. Anxiety, social anxiety comes from that. A lot of fearful me thoughts, like, am I good enough? Or am I going to mess up? Are they going to like me? And so that's a lot of thinking. That's a lot of subjective thinking. You're making up with your magical paintbrush. And
the thing that's coming to mind is like spiraling thoughts. I feel like that's a big, when I was experiencing a lot of social anxiety, like I was just not keeping it simple, letting my thoughts like run super out of control and just, like make a tiny thing into this huge, like meaningful situation that it wasn't.
Here are the main things that get in the way of connection: judgment, taking it personally, coping mechanisms, expectations. Each of these, we could have a podcast on each one of these, quite frankly, and probably we will on some of them. In fact, we already decided our next podcast is going to be digging into judgment. There is a lot to understand there, because honestly, it's a way of using the paintbrush inside, the power thought, that can be so subtle and so common. And usually, if you experience someone else judging you, or you find yourself judging someone, which this could be more common than people are aware of. This is the thing to understand. If someone is judging someone else a lot, they're probably also judging themselves, because this is just a way of using the power thought. And if you're doing it in response to others, you're probably doing it in response to yourself too. These are barriers that we innocently do inside. The more mental health we cultivate, we understand more what they are. We understand more when we're doing them in live time, and we're able to stop ourselves and start heading in a better direction in live time. This is all about how you're using your power, your powerful operating system inside, because it all starts there. Ritu, Ellie, where would be a good jumping off place to discuss one of these things, keeping in mind our next podcast is digging into judgment?
Yeah, I think we talked about this before, and it was sticking out to me, like coping mechanisms, especially the difference between doing something, because like, it comes from innate wisdom, or just like doing it, versus feeling like you need to do something. I feel like that's a big thing that I was struggling with when I was still not understanding connection.
What do you mean by that? Like, if you could break that down a little more.
So I think like coping mechanisms, in the past, I wasn't even really aware what a coping mechanism was, but I was definitely doing them. Like, I would go to parties and I would have in my mind, like, I need to drink to be able to have fun at this party, or to be able to like experience it. Or like, my social anxiety would tell me like, you have to let loose, and like the only way you can like quote unquote connect with people is by being your like uninhibited, like drunk self. So like that was kind of like before every like social event, even if it like wasn't a party, like if it was just like a dinner with friends or something, like I would have in the back of my mind, like, once you start drinking, like this will be more fun, like this will be more enjoyable, like you'll be more entertaining and funny and interesting for these people, which is just like expecting them to like believe a certain thing about me. But it was also just like me using drinking as a coping mechanism or like a way that I thought I was connecting.
So you're saying coping mechanism is when we rely on something on the outside to relax, to
Yeah.
feel more comfortable, to be more secure.
Yeah.
And that's the starting place for connection. But you also kind of had in your mind, you needed to be kind of silly or more comical. Like
Yeah.
you had an expectation in your head, an idea, a mindset in your head, how to connect.
Yeah.
And being silly isn't necessarily how you connect. But in fact, you gave a great example of a tender moment, of a very emotional, intimate moment where there was no silliness. It was actually very authentic and real. There's the first contrast. But the second contrast is you relied on this thing on the outside called alcohol for you to be in a certain state on the inside. And really, like, that thing on the outside, I mean, it clouded your judgment. Like, it clouded your ability to use your mind more consciously or make more conscious decisions or to be able to see from innate wisdom. Yes or no?
Yeah. Like I would wake up and have no idea what happened the night before. So it was like whatever connection I was experiencing in that moment, like it was just like totally gone the next morning. And also just like, like you'd go out and you would drink a lot and like it would end up kind of ruining your night, honestly, sometimes. Because like you would just be so, because you drink too much and get sick. Or like for me also, like when I was drunk, like I would also be more sensitive. I feel like I would kind of take things more personally, or like it would be easier for me to get upset. So it was just like a very like, it was kind of like gambling every time I was drinking. Like, will this be a really great night or will this be like a terrible night where I make like crazy decisions and feel awful in the moment?
I also would like to talk about the biological a little bit and how that's connected to the psychological. Because they're like brother and sister, or sister and sister, or brother and brother, whatever gender you want to use, or not use a gender. Alcohol, when you break it down into its purest form, it's a lot of glucose. And because there's no fiber, like an orange that has glucose in it, that's what, but it has fiber in it, right? So your body processes it. Well, this is just like liquid glucose, plus it's fermented foods, which it's like glucose on steroids, okay? So when you drink it, this glucose is just going right into your system right away. And this is how you get tipsy. This is how you get high. It's those high levels of glucose that just like invade your system. And this is where the cloudiness comes from, or the more sensitivity comes from, is that high level of glucose in your system. And the more you do it, like you said, you don't remember, some people black out, that kind of thing. But here's the other part of that. That glucose leaves your system, and it leaves as fast as it went in your system. And that's what a hangover is. That's where you feel yicky the next day, where your head is clouded. But also in the process, psychologically, it's lowering your mood. And this is where you kind of feel bad the next day, and then you want to drink more to kind of like pick yourself up. Either that, or you just naturally go through the detox, which can take a couple of days or whatever, and you just kind of feel kind of a bit crappy or off-centered inside, or your head's cloudy, or you feel more moody, or you're more easily anxious and or depressed. That is that glucose entering your body and then leaving your body. So it's biological, but because the psychological is like a sibling, the psychological responds in kind. They work together. And the other thing is, like, while your head is cloudy, while you're drinking at this social event, how much are you consciously like understanding the other person or connecting to them? And so it's these very like artificial temporary connections, and who even knows if they really are a connection? Like, who's going to remember what the next day, or that kind of thing.
So an example of where I realized that I was taking it personal and how I shifted was for the past couple of months, I've been working as a computer science instructor for students who are in high school or just finished high school and are trying to figure out if they're interested in going into the STEM industry in college. And so I was working with one student on like some coding problem, and I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't like understand what was wrong. And there was this other student who was sitting next to me who kept interjecting, kept saying, "Why don't you try this out? This is the right answer. You're approaching this wrong." And I noticed when the student kept like interjecting in the conversation, I started to think, why does the student keep talking? Like, this is my classroom. The student shouldn't be telling me what I need to do. Like, I know more than enough. And I started to notice with myself, like there was a lot of tension in my body, and like my head started to feel more cloudy. And I realized like I was seeing this student from ego. I kept thinking like I'm the teacher, like I should know best. The student shouldn't be telling me what to do. And then it hit me. I was like, oh yeah, this student is actually correct. Like they're giving me the right answer. They're trying to help me to help this other student understand this problem then. And I felt like after that moment, I could have been doing better with my own listening. I realized like I was biologically listening to what they were saying, but I wasn't really psychologically listening to myself inside. I noticed that I was getting like frustrated and angry with this student who was sitting next to me, and I was starting to become a little bit more critical of them, when really I could have just been more patient with what they were saying and become more open-minded. And I realized in that moment where I realized in that moment that it was completely fine for me to be okay, and that as a teacher, I shouldn't be having so many expectations on myself that like I'll know everything, and that a student shouldn't be like interfering in the classroom. A classroom is like a space for everyone to learn and just work with one another. So I realized that I could have been more patient in that moment and not take it so personally what that other student was saying then.
I think that's a great example that initially there was no connection.
Mm-hmm.
You were not allowing any connection inside. You weren't experiencing any connection with that student. And what was behind it, it was a lot of personal thinking.
Mm-hmm.
You were picking up that power called thought, and you were making up these, you called it ego. That's a great way to call it. And ego is a thing that can happen inside of us, but what it is it's temporary. Mm-hmm. It's a lens we create with our operating system, and it's basically a lot of me thoughts and I thoughts. And in that moment, you were saying, I'm the teacher. Why are they interrupting and telling me these things? Like, so that's a lot of personal thinking that you're making up in your head. And in those moments, it was what you learned in mental health counseling, grounded in the 3 principles, that you were able to psychologically listen inside, observe and notice. You observed and noticed what was the biological sensations, the tightness. You observed the feeling inside of being the psychological feeling of being frustrated. You noticed your head was getting more cloudy. That's becoming more present. That's the first part of self-regulating and using your operating system. You shifted from a lot of making up personal thoughts to actually more consciously understanding how you were using your operating system. And then as you allowed those personal thoughts to clear, you gave a perfect example of seeing from your innate wisdom, your authentic self, and I'm sure our listeners even felt it. Like, a classroom is a place for everyone to learn and participate. Like, that's innate wisdom. That's coming through you, and that's something you're allowing yourself to see that's coming through you, and a connection is naturally unfolding inside of you. You're feeling it, and now you're feeling it with the student who was like interrupting you. And the other thing to point out was you were willing to see the facts. You were willing to see from your authentic self, which really was saying you were wrong in the first place, the way you were seeing it, the way you were understanding it, the way you were approaching it. And it's just, that's courage and that's doing the right thing, to be willing to be wrong. And actually, as you were willing to go there, you freed yourself from this psychological prison inside. Like, you were isolating yourself in those moments through the power called thought. And and because you were courageous and willing, and you also had enough awareness to know how to do it and why to do it, that it was just in a few moments, a very short period of time, you became resilient, you became grounded, you allowed a connection to come inside. That's all self-regulation. And here's the other cool thing. You demonstrated to your students a very important psychological skill. You were the leader in those moments, and you were teaching them something without words that is so important for them to understand, to succeed in life, to feel connections, to learn. Being a leader sometimes is invisible. It's psychological. But trust me, some of those kids, if not more than some, they picked up on that. Okay. In those moments, you were building more of a relationship with them that the one they really needed. You were developing a conscious relationship with yourself and with them in live time. And it was a series of moments. And in some of those moments, you went from a non-connected state to a connected state inside. Yeah. I could see this like really leaving an impression on them. That is the essence of leadership right there. What you did. Hats off to you, Ritu. It's fantastic. I'm excited for your students, quite frankly. So that's the other thing. When we do the right thing inside, when we use our mind consciously, our power inside consciously, we're doing what's right for ourselves, because you felt a lot better. You had realizations, you understood more, but you also gave them what they needed. Even if you didn't teach them about connection, you showed them connection, okay? And then on top of that, your whole classroom, the climate environment was so much healthier. When we do the right thing from clarity, it's a win-win for everyone. And that's totally the opposite of seeing from ego or taking it personally, or not being willing to be wrong or make mistakes, which honestly, what human being isn't wrong sometimes? Like, if you're afraid of being wrong, like, or you're afraid of making mistakes, like, honestly, you're trying not to be a human being. And the fact is, you are a human being, and human beings, as I said before, are perfectly imperfect. So to try to mask or avoid something that's a part of you, like, well, that's called like really turmoil inside. That's a lot of turmoil. That's a lot of hard work. And it doesn't matter how mentally healthy we are. Like, the other thing is mistakes, willing to be wrong. That's the jump off point to learning. That's the jump off point to healing. Like, and it's an important part of the process. It's an essential part of the process, is to allow yourself to see, oh, this is not it. Well, what is it? You also taught your kids an important thing about learning itself, and that is the willingness to be wrong and to open up your mind and to learn more. So a lot can happen in a couple of moments psychologically, whether we realize it or not. Your thoughts, Ellie?
Yeah, I feel like that was a great example of just like when you're a leader, like you really do have a lot of control or power, whether you realize it or not. And I feel like it kind of extends to everything, like teachers especially, like having judgments and like taking things personally and just like being afraid of being human, like you said, Faith. Like, how able are you really to do the thing that you signed up to do?
How committed are you, and how willing are you to upgrade and improve? When somebody is at something for a while, maybe 10 years, maybe 20 years, or they have these higher levels of education, like a master's, a PhD, or like even like a medical doctor or something like that, or like they pass the bar. I'm not saying all people, I'm saying at least some people. They think they understand everything that there is to understand. That's a mirage. Like in live time, maybe you understand, but maybe there's a lot more for you to understand. And that's what actually makes life more and more interesting, is when you're in your field for 10 years, or you're in your field for 20 years, or you have a PhD or whatever, which you have put a lot of work into those things. But in live time, to have an open mind, to possibly learn more, to see more, that's what keeps life interesting, okay? That's what like revitalizes us. But that's also the state of mind, humility. And it's a secure state of mind. Like you're basically saying, maybe I know the answer, maybe I don't know the answer. Maybe there's more for me to understand. You're secure, you're grounded. It's not self-doubt. You're just willing to see more in case there's more to see. And that goes a long way, inside, outside, especially if you're a leader. Like that, your business or your organizations or your classroom is going to go to the next level, because all of a sudden you have this new awareness, this fresh awareness. It's really important for people to realize life is always changing, no matter whether we see it, no matter whether we realize it. And you know life is changing when you see the flowers come out in spring and the leaves fall off the trees in the autumn. That is a sign everything is alive and life is changing. We are changing inside. Call it aging. Okay? And I'm using it in a secure, neutral way. It's like when you're born, your body is going through new processes. Psychologically, you have new responsibilities in your life, going from high school to college, or if you just go into a field, out to work. But the thing is to understand, like, in that moment, since we're alive, like there's a lot that we can experience or that can happen. That was a really great example, Ritu, that in that moment, things were really alive and you took full opportunity in that moment to make the most out of that moment.
This podcast, we covered connection. We hit a lot of things. We introduced connection, talked about why it was important, talked about what gets in the way of connecting and next steps. Our next podcast, we're going to dive in a little bit more about judgment, which will be a really exciting one, so you should definitely tune in for that. My name is Ellie. I'm one of your junior co-hosts.
And I'm Ritu. I'm your other junior co-host.
And I'm Faith Escudero, your host of Got Your Back podcast, all things mental health, from leading edge mental health facts, more specifically 3 Principles Psychology, which is about the operating system each one of us have inside: mind, thought, consciousness. Look forward to our next conversation together and you joining us. Bye for now.